Welcome to Mommispace, the podcast for moms of all stages. My name is Aubrey Coots, and this podcast was created to give moms a voice to share their experiences and to share that there is not just one way to be a mom. This is a place where you can learn to love the woman inside the mother. Welcome back to Mommispace. This is Aubrey Coots, and today I get to chat with my friend Michelle Jr., and I met Michelle at a church that I was previously a part of in San Bernardino, Community Bible Church. And we met through, I think, just through the women's ministry, and I was a part of the children's ministry and got to meet several of her kiddos through being a part of children's ministry and just seeing how beautiful her family is and just learning more about her story and how her family has grown. I really wanted to talk to her for this month with our theme on adoption. And just have her share about what the motherhood journey has looked like for her. So, Michelle, welcome to Mommispace.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so excited to hear. Well, I've heard a lot of your story before, but for you to share with whoever's listening, and I know that they'll be as encouraged as I've been. So, to start off, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and the story of your journey into motherhood.
Yeah, so my name is Michelle. Yeah, I've been married for 27 years. I've got 9 kids, ages 4 through 34. So I've got a preschooler and, a man child who works for the district attorney's office. I've got 2 grandkids. And so I became a mom really young. When I was 12 years old, my mom had a boyfriend who befriended our family, and this man ended up kidnapping me, and he violated me, he raped me, and I became pregnant by him. And 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, I gave birth to a baby boy. And the plan at that time I was living with my father at that point. I was removed from my mom's home and sent to live with my dad. And my dad placed me in this, it was called an unwed mother's home. And so the plan was for me to give this baby up for adoption. So I began communicating with this couple through this adoption agency that wanted to adopt another child. And we spoke on the phone, we wrote letters, and we exchanged pictures. And, it was exciting. And, it was an exciting couple of months. When I was placed in that home, I was actually, when I go back just a couple, when I was found, I was 4.5 months pregnant. So I went to live with my dad, and then I was placed in this mother's home when I was 7 months. So I went through 1.5 months of communicating with this adoptive family. And it was, it was a home where teens went to have babies and give their babies up for adoption. So the agreement was, as a young girl, was to have your baby at the hospital and to not see your child, because they didn't want any connection. They didn't want you to just connect with your baby. And so I agreed to not see him. But there was this nurse at the hospital that came into my room, and I remember just watching TV one night. I don't know if it was the evening that I had the baby or the next morning, and I remember just watching TV, and this nurse came in and asked me, "Why aren't you keeping your baby?" And I just simply said to her, "I'm 12 years old, and I don't have anything to offer him." And I remember her just looking at me and just saying, "Well, you don't have to give him up." And I just sat there and just thought, I'd never thought through that. I never thought, well, I can keep him. So she left the room, and minutes later, she came back with the baby, and she placed him right on my chest. And I just remember at that moment, for the first time, thinking, I had been carrying this baby, but there was no connection with this baby. But as soon as I felt him breathing, and I could just see his little, his hair. At the time, there were Monchichi dolls. You probably don't know what those are, but somebody out there in the podcast world probably knows what a Monchichi doll is. They had this fuzzy hair, and I remember the baby just had this fuzzy, like flyaway hair, and I thought, this is my baby. And so I just held him there for a minute, and of course I was afraid because my family and the nurses, and I was living in this group home that was run by nuns. They were out in the lobby, and I knew that they were in the hospital, but I don't think that they knew that the baby was in the room with me. So I was so fearful that somebody was going to come in and see me with him. And so the nurse came in shortly thereafter and took the baby. And long story short, I ended up keeping this baby and naming him David. And so I was in the seventh grade. And so needless to say, over the next several years, it was difficult, like extremely difficult. David and I lived in group homes and shelters and on the streets for a little while, just wandering place to place. It was extremely difficult. And we went through so many things, and through my teen years of just no stability. And I just had this haunting, awful feeling constantly, like I shouldn't have kept this baby. I should have gave him to that family that had something to give him. But I loved him so much. And I look back and, I think, gosh, that was not the smartest decision I could have ever made. But I look at my life now and I can't imagine making any other decision. So fast forward, like through a lot of stuff. That's a whole nother podcast. Fast forward several years, and I'm 22. I'm married. David's 10 now, and we receive a phone call from a social worker while my husband's at work, and they're telling me on the line that my sister, that I barely knew, that I didn't grow up with, we were separated when we were really young, had a baby, and that was placed in foster care. And so they were asking, hey, you are her sister, would you like to take this baby in? Well, this came out of left field. Like, I just received this call out of really nowhere. I didn't even know my sister was pregnant. So I said, well, I need to talk to my husband. We need to pray about it, and I'll get back to you. That was a Friday, and the whole weekend, and come Monday, Keith and I knew that we were supposed to take this baby in. So, and he was born addicted to meth. He was placed into the foster system, and it was a long, long process, as you know, very well know, of the next couple of years in and out of court with my sister and her boyfriend, and just their life was just not good. They were both, my sister was using still at the time, and I think the boyfriend was too. They were just not, they just were not in a good place at all. So, but the court goes through, they give them ample opportunities to get their lives right, go to parenting classes, do this, do that. And they weren't fulfilling any of those things. So we went through about 2.5, 3 years of in and out of court with them, and just, just being there. And we had the baby and in our care. And so I think he was about 3 when the adoption was finalized. And then fast forward some more years and years and years and years, my sister went on to have 7 more children, all addicted to meth and cocaine and alcohol. And so for over the last 24 years, we've adopted a total of 8 kids. And they came to our home in different ways. Some of them, the last 2, my sister had at the hospital, and within an hour she left the babies at the hospital, literally with just a note saying, call my sister. Her name is Michelle Jr., and she'll take my baby. So that's my mom's story. I know there's a lot of fast forwarding. I'm
Oh
trying to
man.
condense it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my mom story.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say you probably have one of the most unique journeys to motherhood of anyone that I know, at least.
Right.
Just, yeah, how your family has grown and becoming a mother at such a young age and the things that you went through, just even with that experience. And then, like you said, adopting these
Right.
eight babies from your sister. That's like, it's such an incredible
Yeah.
story, but it's such a beautiful picture of the same time of just you and your husband being like, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to say yes to this hard
Yes.
thing. I would love to hear why you continue to say yes. Like, what was the motivation behind that?
Well, our hearts, I mean, we talk about this, my husband and I, all the time, that, around the fourth, fifth child, I was adamant, like, Keith, I'm done. I'm I'm old. I mean, I was in my 40s. I wasn't really old. I'm still in my 40s. I mean, but I was 30s, I guess I was. But I was exhausted, like in and out of court and in and out of, just appointments and just the day-to-day doctor appointments and dentists and, eyeglasses and, I mean, going to the park, making lunch. I mean, it's a laundry. I can keep going.
Oh
Making beds.
man,
It's diapers, potty training. I'm just
it's
like,
never
God,
ending.
yeah, and it never stops. And I'm like, God, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
Every time we received a call, we knew immediately. We didn't even have to talk about it. We just knew that we were supposed to take the next one. And we couldn't imagine separating the siblings. I
Yeah.
just, neither one of us could fathom that, like knowing that they have a brother or sister out there in foster care or another family. And I just don't know. It just broke my heart even thinking about that. Both of us, we were, you know, we were on the same page always. It wasn't like, oh, Keith's, we weren't. I was exhausted and Keith knew I was, and Keith was exhausted too. But we both, when we received phone calls, we knew this is what we're supposed to keep doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Wow. That's incredible. Well, thank you for continuing to say yes. And I
yeah,
think just hearing, like you said, like wanting to keep siblings together,
yeah.
obviously that's something that we value as well in getting to
Yes, I know.
adopt our little trio.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's even still a possibility for us, kind of similarly to you. It's like we don't know in the
Yeah.
future what that will look like, or if
Mhm.
siblings will join our family. Uh,
Mhm.
but thank you just for that example, I guess, even to our family.
Yeah.
That's been like such an encouragement to us, and I know maybe even if your kids don't realize it now, maybe some of them do.
Mhm.
Just what a gift that is like such a cool thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I pray that they understand that one day. I mean, because you and I both know the difficulty of placing children in sibling sets into any home. I mean,
yeah,
it's when they go into foster care, that it's typical that they're all separated, or they just split them up in some fashion if they're more than 3 4 kids. I mean,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question that I have for you is what have been some of the challenges in the adoption process? I know you touched on that a little bit just with being in and out of court, which I understand.
Yeah.
But if you want to expand on that at all, as well as just challenges in having adopted children and how have you overcome that or worked through that?
Well, I know you and I haven't talked much about, life lately in the last couple of years, but anyone that has children knows that, our children can bring us the greatest joy, like that surpasses most anything, but they can also cause us the deepest pain. So, my two oldest adoptive children have gone, they have left our homes and have made really poor choices that have broken our hearts. Um, our oldest, Sean, has and it's just going to make me cry. He actually went into the military 4 years ago, and we were so excited for him. He was actually in the fire academy getting ready to go to be a EMT firefighter. And instead he thought, okay, well, I want to go into the military. So he enlisted and did great, scored very high, got top jobs. And but then he got discharged, and he found himself in just a really bad place. He stopped communicating with us, and we went through several months of not hearing from him, and we tried to contact him or write him letters, and we didn't know where he was. And then one day, I guess it's been about 3 years now, that he called us from a veterans hospital, and he had knee surgery, and he was really broken, just crying, "Mom and Dad, I miss you guys." And of course we were just like, "You are our son. You're welcome here. We love you." And so he came home, and we brought him back in, and he went back into school and continued his education. And one day he just really just made a horrible decision. And as we speak right now, he is spending 8 to 10 years in prison.
Oh my God.
And it's excruciatingly painful. When you adopt a baby and you pour out your life for them, you pray. Nobody wants this for their child. You pray that they will go and make right decisions. You pray that they will grow up and have families and have children. You dream all these things for your children. But like all of us, it just makes one choice. It just takes one choice that takes us down these devastating paths. I remember the day that he was sentenced, standing in the courtroom, reading a statement before the judge in the courtroom, and telling them that his name, Sean, means a gift from God. We saw that when we brought him into our home, that he was a gift, and that he still is a gift. And I pray that one day he will see that God has a plan for his life. It's not over. He still is a gift from God. The Bible talks about children being a gift from God. So that's one of the hardest things, that the challenges. I've gone through some difficult things with our kids. You can imagine, with 9 kids, we've gone, and we have every age group, and just so many ups and downs with children. And but this was by far has been the most difficult thing that probably in my life that I've had to endure. But I have to go back to, I think about when I had my son David, and I think about how God got me through that. And if he can get me through that time, he will continue to sustain me and get me through this time. And I have no doubt that that's why God had that happen to me at such a young age, because I don't know if I would have any kind of sanity sitting here talking with you today had I not seen God's hand way back when I was 12 on my life. And I know God is faithful. Even though it might look like it's horrible right now, God makes things that are horrible. He can turn it into something beautiful. We just trust him, and we wait for that.
I can't imagine. I don't have anything to say. I can't imagine the pain that brings to all of you. like, where do you draw hope from in the midst of that?
Well, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that our hope is in Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that is my only hope. I mean, the day that Sean chose to do what he did, the only thing I could do was go up to my room and open up my Bible. And my Bible naturally falls to Psalm 27 because there's been so many tears shed on those pages in my Bible that it just falls to that. But, you know, that whole psalm is just, you know, the Lord is the light of and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? You know, and then my favorite verse 4 is, one thing I have desired of the Lord, and that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all of the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. When I go through things like this, I know that no matter what situation I'm in, that I can run into his presence and just find comfort when nothing else brings comfort. No one and nothing else brings comfort like he brings comfort.
Thank you for sharing all of that. That's heavy. Ugh, man.
I know. Well, you know, when you think about adoption, you don't think about all of that. You don't think about the span
Right.
of the life of a child, you know. You think about when they're babies or they're kids and you bring them into your home, but they become adults too later.
Yeah.
And I know this is not one of your questions, but I was actually a foster kid, and I know you know that through Koinonia foster home. And I stay in contact with my foster mom. I was the last child that she took into her home. And you know, and there were many, many kids in and out of her home that have just gone astray and have just, you know, did not do well in life. And but I make sure that I call her and that I tell her, you know, the impact she has made on my life.
Yeah.
I mean, without her, I don't know. I mean, without God, but God in her,
Yeah.
I don't know where I'd be. I mean, I went into her home when I was 16 and David was almost 4. And it was her and her life that changed the trajectory of my life. She changed my life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there will be a couple years that go by that I don't talk to her, but, you know, just recently talking to her and telling her our life now and starting in church. She's so excited. She's just overwhelmed with joy. Like, I can't believe all this stuff. Because when I went into her home, I was a mess. And it's scary. It's scary taking in a teen child with a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was straight off the street. I'm talking hood. I mean, it was not a good situation, but she opened up her heart and home to me. And that's another thing. Just placing teen kids is another you know, adoption arena that people don't readily venture into, is taking in teens, because you're taking in all of the stuff that comes with them that,
Right.
you know, that's difficult. But she did. She was willing, and she was willing to put up with my attitude and differences of beliefs and everything, and just stay. She was just a steady person in my life. And oh my goodness, I just love her so much. I'm so thankful. So thankful for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
I think even just you saying that woman, and
yes,
even just that example to you, probably in retrospect of like, man, this amazing woman was able to say yes to me.
Yeah.
And all these other, you know, kids and teens that came through her home.
Yeah.
and I'm sure, she impacted so many lives, but it's cool
Yes,
to
she
think that
did.
years later, how that impact probably still is a model and example to you on like
Oh,
how to love your
yes.
children. And
I
yeah,
think about her all the time
yeah,
because she became my mom, the mom that I didn't have. And I
right.
learned how to be a woman. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to interact with people. And she taught me all that. And she would tell you that she didn't teach me a whole lot because she didn't know how, she would tell you that.
Yeah,
But she's just walked in humility.
yeah.
But she just watching her life, it was just amazing.
Wow.
So
Well, obviously, in having children that have come from hard places and
yes.
started off in hard places,
Mhm.
there's a lot of hardship connected to that. But on the other side of that, I would love if you could share some of the greatest joys in having adopted children.
Yeah, when I think about every day, it just gives me so much joy. One of my favorite things to do is just to sit and watch them play and just knowing that, they have no idea like where they came from. They don't know. Like three of our kids, we actually picked up from a park. My sister was living in a park with them, and they hadn't eaten in like 2 weeks when we picked them up. They were drinking Kool-Aid from bottles, and and today they have no remembrance of that. They sit and they play, and I watch them play with toys and interact with each other, and um, that's what brings me the greatest joy. Is they
Mm.
don't have the worries, and nobody's going to come and take them. There's food for them to eat, and they have a bed to sleep in, but it's so much more than that. It's just um, we love them.
Mhm.
They are our kids. Keith and I, after I had David and we got married, I was 19, he was 20, and after we got married, we weren't able to have children. We went through infertility doctors and different medications, and I had some procedures done. We went through a few years of wanting to have kids, and I wasn't having kids, and we were like, what's going on?
Mm.
And then that's when we received a phone call for Sean. And then even after that, we still kept trying to have kids, and years and years and years, and I wasn't able to have any children. But
Wow.
God gave us all these kids his way, his way. So, you know, that's the way God worked in our lives. We wanted kids and we asked for kids, and he gave us a lot of kids. But God, you can stop already.
Okay,
So,
God,
yeah.
you answered it. We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that too.
Yeah.
I feel like just kind of like the stigma of adoption. Obviously, your story and how your family has grown is very unique. But just adoption in general, I think a lot of the times it's just assumed like, oh, they couldn't have kids, so they just adopted all these kids.
Right,
You
right.
know, where like
Exactly.
where maybe that's a piece of the story, but not the whole story.
Right.
And
Exactly.
our story is kind of similar to that. We've been married
Uh-huh.
5 years, and
Yeah.
we haven't done any fertility testing or treatments or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but we just haven't gotten pregnant
Yeah.
and knew we wanted to be parents and knew we wanted to adopt, didn't know what that would look like. And here we are. And I have 3 babies, and
I
I don't know if
know.
we'll have more at some point down the road. And if we don't, then I'm totally content with that. It's just cool to see how God has grown our families and fulfilled that desire, even if it's
I
not
know it.
how we had anticipated.
Yeah, it's just
Um,
crazy, but it was God's plan.
yeah.
So,
I'd love if you could share why or why not you think adoption is important for any family to consider. I know you touched on even considering
yeah.
adopting teens, but just if you want to expand on that question.
Yeah. So, being in, taking in half of these children through the foster care system, we've come to just be very familiar and know how many kids are waiting for homes. of
Yeah.
all ages. I
Yeah.
mean, in all ethnicities. That's something that I know that's not talked about too much, but, you know, I mean, there are kids of all colors, all ages, and they're all children though,
Mm.
and they're just waiting. They're just waiting for home. So, I mean, when we brought these kids in, when we'd had social workers come to for their monthly visits or whatever, they would ask, "Do you have extra room? Do you have an extra bed?" I mean, what we at one point we had my mom living with us, and she was living in our guest room, and then she moved out, and the day she was moving out, a social worker came to visit and saw my mom like with the U-Haul moving, and she was like, "Oh, you have another bed." I'm like, "Oh
Oh
no,
my
yeah,
God.
we're no,
No, we're
no."
done.
Yeah, I'm like, "No, that's
We're
not
maxed
open.
out.
There's no vacancy." So I mean, but you know what? I mean, but seriously though, I mean, Keith and I have just, I mean, we pray God, like I'm so exhausted, I'm done, but we are always like, "God, if you want us to do something that we are not wanting to do, you change our hearts, Lord,
Mm.
and you give us what we need to do what you need to do." So, but we haven't brought any more. We haven't, taken any other kids in besides the 8. Um, but that's quite a bit already. So
Just a little.
just and then it's funny because I know this is kind of taking us off track, but our guest room is now inhabited by my oldest son David and his wife.
Okay.
they just moved back in with us, so
Okay.
just a couple of months ago. So it's
Oh,
funny I love it though. I love
full
having
circle.
my son back home with me. It's so funny. But yeah, that's just been a blessing. Just a huge blessing for our family. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's
yeah.
amazing. What have been some of your favorite resources as an adoptive mom, or resources maybe that you share with people that are thinking about adoption?
It's funny how when people are thinking about adoption or they're thinking about foster care, they pick up the phone, they call Michelle Jr. because they think I'm like this pro at like all things foster care and adoption. I'm not. But the number one thing I always say is make sure that you have a strong church family
Yeah.
and strong support system,
Yeah.
because as you and I know that it is not easy day to day. One day you think, oh, things are good, and it looks like everything's going to be finalized this week, and then they push it back another 6 months, and it's just this tug of war, and it's painful, it's
Yeah.
exhausting, and you just need people praying for you.
Yeah.
You just need people in your corner that know your name and know your kid's name, and they're bringing those names before the throne of God and saying,
Mhm.
God, this is what we need, Lord.
Yeah.
And so that's I mean, there are a lot of resources out there that the community provides, the county does, and there's lots of resources, but I can't think of one that surpasses
Hmm.
the church,
Hmm.
your church, your home church family.
Yeah.
So that's our number one. So
Man. Well, I'm on board with that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. I think in the last 3 years for us, just over 3 years since starting this whole journey, um,
mhm,
that's been something that was so needed. And I'm so thankful for the people that have come alongside us and
yeah,
been in it with us, in
yes,
in the celebrations and in the loss and in the tears
yes,
and in the
yes,
transition and in the trauma, all of it.
yes. There's
um,
so many
yeah,
ups and downs.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
I definitely agree about having a support system, but having, I
yes,
think even more so for you and I, like being followers of Jesus, having your church
yeah,
family, like having that around us and having people that can point you to biblical truth during
yes,
those low points and days is really
yes,
helpful. So, yeah,
yes.
thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So this last question, I just love to ask different mamas, and I feel like everyone always kind of has a similar response when I ask it. But I would just love to hear from you. What is the legacy that you want to leave for your children?
Oh gosh. It's something I am mindful of all the time, and you just hope and pray that your kids, like all the yelling and screaming and do your homework and all of that stuff just leaves their mind after you're gone.
Please, Lord.
And I know, please, Lord, but that they would see us like mom and dad lived their life for God.
Yeah.
And they sacrificed and gave to us, not just stuff, because none of that matters, but that they loved us and they love people. And, we tell our kids all the time, you can't take stuff with you, but you could take people. Like, I want to see you again. Like when I'm gone, like mom, dad's gone one day, I pray that we are in eternity in heaven together.
Yeah.
So I pray that our kids tangibly not just hear us talking about serving the Lord, but that they see us living sacrificial lives. It's being a mom and a dad. This is a thankless job. Like 98% of the time they don't say thank you for anything. Like they ask all day, and you give, and then every few months oh, thank you, and I'm like, oh God. And my heart's melted. I mean, that's what being a mom is. I mean, and more than half, it's like everything that you do is not seen by anybody but God. He sees all the late nights, you're up all night with babies and diapers and laundry. I mean, he sees everything. And so half of the stuff that we do as parents is not seen by anybody but God. But I pray that my kids do see some and they just know that we've given up our lives to give them a life that, we didn't have. We didn't have growing up. And again, it's not the stuff. It's just our hearts is to create this environment where they feel loved and safe and cared for, and that their souls receive this nourishment so they can go out and be great moms and dads too one day.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I think I know you shared a bit of your story, and then just recently hearing your husband's story, it is so incredible just to think about how God has brought you two together.
I know.
And you're raising all these kids, and
it's crazy.
And you just want to make him known, make God known in your life,
yes.
to your kids and to others. And that, I know that's been such an encouragement.
Yes.
For our family. So, yeah, I pray that for you as well, that you'll just continue to point your kids to Christ, and that they will continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for just for this time of getting to ask you these questions and to share a lot of the raw and real sides of of adoption. And it's not all about having this big, beautiful, colorful family and it's, a happy ending all the time.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces to it. So thank you for just even being willing to share some of that with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I've been really encouraged by you, and I'm excited to share this with other mamas too. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out all of the goodness from today's episode on the show notes and share this with a friend if it impacted you in any way. You can also leave a review on iTunes so other mamas can join in the movement of loving the woman inside the mother. Join our online Mommispace community every day by following us on Instagram @Mommispace, where you can interact with me, some of our past guests, Ask simple or hard questions and give your valuable input on how to make Mommispace an even more beautiful and safe place for mamas all over the world. All my love to you, Mama. You are enough.